What's going on, Packer fans? Happy Packers game day. Packers Bears, longest, best rivalry in sports. There's nothing quite like it. We've got a lot to discuss. I'm going to go over my prediction for the game, my keys to the game, some roster moves. But before we get there, just a couple things. I know that everyone kind of has their preference of do they like noon football games, 3:30? Do you like Sunday night football, Monday night football? I don't know of many people who prefer Thursday night football, but I'm somebody that I don't care all that much. I will say that night games become a lot more challenging when you have to write an article the next day and do a podcast and a video and everything like that. But I don't think any of you really care about that. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. I love football. I love the Packers, and I'm going to watch no matter what time it's at. And I think kind of the variety is what I like. But there's something about Packers Bears for me that just screams noon kickoff. I don't know why, it just feels right. And I am so excited for this game. I'm so excited for this rivalry to continue. It just seems that no matter who's good, who's bad, I know the Packers have owned the Bears number for some time now, but these games are just always entertaining. Crazy things happen. The Randall Cobb touchdown, the other Randall Cobb touchdown, it's always something. And I'm very, very excited about this game, as I'm sure you can tell, but it just feels right being a noon kickoff Packers Bears. So hopefully you got to this episode prior to the game. I do know that when it is a noon kickoff, it's obviously leaves a little less time to get to these preview shows, but thank you so much for joining me. Always appreciate it. Let's get to some roster transactions that did take place on Saturday. The only one is that the Packers brought up Juwann Winfree from the practice squad, which on the surface, not, super big deal, but it is exciting to see Juwann Winfree. He was the star of many camps and OTAs and the very, very, very beginning of training camp before he went down with the injury. I think everyone was very excited that Green Bay was able to get him back on the practice squad, and it is exciting that he is going to see game action. Now, what that means exactly remains to be seen. Now, we have seen Equanimeous St. Brown come up and actually play snaps. Now, he's on the roster, so we'll see what that means for Winfree. He takes Malik Taylor's spot. It still seems a little crazy to me that Green Bay feels that they need 7 wide receivers. Now, to be fair, the majority of these wide receivers, and I guess MVS is out, so I digress, but it still seems crazy to me that they feel like they need this many wide receivers still, but a lot of these wide receivers are not playing special teams. EQ, Malik Taylor, potentially Juwann Winfree will as well. We'll see just what that type of role is, but either way, I'm excited to see if Winfree brings anything to the table as a actual wide receiver, because he was doing very well early in OTAs, mini camps, and training camps. So we'll see what he can bring. But I think maybe the more interesting aspect of call-ups on Saturday was the fact that there was no Ben Braden. And that may not seem, again, super important to begin with, but when you think of this, Dennis Kelly was officially ruled out on Saturday, which let's start doing some offensive lineman math really quick here. So Yosh Nijman will be active, John Runyon Jr., Josh Myers, Royce Newman, Billy Turner, Lucas Patrick, Jake Hansen. That's 7. No Dennis Kelly. All right, you're probably not going to go into the game with only 7 offensive linemen. It's been done before, but it's not likely. So that means, in all likelihood, Yosh Nijman will be active for this game. Now, a couple things we do not know. We have seen teams from time to time go the route of, well, he's going to be active, but he's going to be only up in an emergency situation. That could happen. I hate that idea. If he's not ready to go 100%, then just activate Braden, right? You'll get through a game and you can, the worst thing you could do, and actually Mekhi Becton, who the Jets did this with him, I think it was last year. Somebody feel free to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I think it was last year. They activate him for the game and as an emergency only player. And then, of course, the left tackle goes out. Mekhi Becton comes in and he re-injures or re-aggravates his injury and then is out for a much longer period of time. If you're not ready to play, just make them inactive and wait for the next week. But it seems like Elgton Jenkins is going to be active, and my guess means that he's going to play in this game. Now, the second thing we don't know is where is he going to play? I think there's a couple logical things. You could put him at left tackle for Yosh. You could put him at left guard for John Runyon Jr. You could put him at right guard for Royce Newman. You could put him at left guard and then have John Runyon Jr. move to right guard. There's a few different things. I suppose theoretically you could put him at center. Right? I mean, you could put Elgton Jenkins anywhere, right? That's the point here. But if I had to guess, I think he will go at left tackle. As I mentioned yesterday, Yash would come off. He would kind of be, probably the first tackle in the game. And then Lucas Patrick would probably be the first guard / center in the game if needed. But they could go in a variety of different ways. But it seems, based on the inactive or the injury report, Dennis Kelly being out, no Ben Braden up, that Elgton Jenkins likely to play or at least be active in this game. And I'd be pretty surprised if he didn't play at this point. So that's good news for Green Bay. And I think overall that's good news from the updates from Saturday. So let's get into our keys to the game. And I think the first one, again, and some of these are always a little bit obvious to start, but number one is who wins this pass rush battle. From a Bears standpoint, are Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks and these guys active? And if so, you've got Hicks, you've got Mack, you've got Robert Quinn. You've got a very good Bears defensive front that you have to deal with for 4 straight quarters, with potentially Elgton Jenkins playing his first game back. You've still got, you've got Josh Myers probably returning from injury. You potentially have Royce Newman is still a young player in there. This is a tough matchup for this offensive line. Now, nothing new, right? The Steelers and 49ers were certainly tough matchups. And the Bengals with Reeder and Hendrickson and Hubbard and that whole group, no slouches either. So this has been a tested offensive line, and they've been able to win the majority of those battles. Can they keep that up against Chicago, or can Chicago keep up their ridiculous level of success with the amount of sacks and pressures, more sacks actually than pressures, that they're getting on the quarterback? So that will be one. And on the flip side, same thing, right? This is a bad Bears offensive line for the most part. They got a couple good players here and there, but for the most part, this is a Bears offensive line that you can get pressure on the quarterback and can stop the run. What level of impact can Kenny Clark and Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary and so on and so forth have in this game? And I think the winner, whoever gets more pressure on the opposing quarterback, has a huge leg up in this game. Number two is very related to number one, and that's don't let Justin Fields get comfortable. You don't want Matt Nagy in this Bears offense to dictate what Justin Fields is going to do in this game. You don't want him to have clarity in the pocket. You don't want him to be one read and being able to get rid of the ball with a clear and simple pass. Like, you want him to have to diagnose everything. You want to probably play your corners up as much as possible, not give him easy throwing lanes. You want to get as much pressure on him as possible, which, goes without saying against any quarterback. But in this game, I think the more uncomfortable Justin Fields can be, again, the better it's going to be for the Packers. This is a quarterback who was one of the longest times to throw in all of college football a season ago. He still is not, processing everything quite as quickly as you would expect from a rookie. So if Green Bay can make him uncomfortable, hopefully you can get a couple of throws that he would like to have back and maybe get a couple turnovers from that. Number three is how good can Green Bay's cornerbacks be in this game? We talked yesterday, Isaac Yiadom, I think, is going to be the outside starter, along with Chandon Sullivan on the inside, and of course, Eric Stokes at the other spot. But just how good can those corners be matched up against this group of, Allen Robinson and Mooney and so on and so forth? This is a matchup that the Bears wide receivers should win. Now, of course, it takes pass protection up front, Justin Fields making the correct reads, getting rid of the ball on time, all the sort of things. But can Green Bay's corners hold up? Allen Robinson can beat the best of corners in the league. He's not going to be going up against the best of corners in this league. Darnell Mooney is a very good wide receiver. I know he's only in year 2, but he still is a very good player who can win against most corners in this league. How well do Green Bay's corners stand up in this game? I think that's going to be another huge factor here. Number 4 is Green Bay's energy level in this game. And I've mentioned this on Green Bay Nation. I may have mentioned it here on the videos earlier this week as well. But one thing that always concerns me is when you've gone to an overtime game and basically played a full extra quarter of football the week before. Now, the temperatures weren't insanely hot last week, and it wasn't like they expelled a ton of extra energy. In fact, you look at the snap counts in that game, and even though they went into overtime, the snap counts were pretty reminiscent of a normal 4-quarter football game. So I think Green Bay has that to be thankful for. However, I go back to that Packers tie against Minnesota in 2018. That was the game where Clay Matthews had the hit and they called the penalty and so on and so forth. And Minnesota probably should have won in overtime like 3 times. It ends up being a tie. Anywho, both of those teams went to play the next week. Green Bay went on the road to Washington. Were big favorites going into that game. The Vikings played at home against the Bills. This is not the current Bills. This is a really bad 2018 Bills. and were heavy favorites in that game. The Vikings lost at home to the Bills, being heavy favorites 27-6. The Packers lost in Washington in a game they were favored in 31-17. Both of those teams were exhausted from the week before, and it showed up in that next game. How much energy does Green Bay have in that game, in this game, coming off a pretty, intense might be the wrong word, but that was a close game where every snap mattered, came down to the end. There was a lot of emotion, especially in the missed field goals and things like that on both sides. And they traveled to Cincinnati, came back. Now they travel to Chicago. What's Green Bay's energy level? We've seen some of these games on the road where Green Bay just doesn't have that level of energy. How are things feeling this week? They've got a lot of really talented players that are out. I want to see Green Bay get off to a good start and hopefully maintain that momentum, because it's possible that they do have a little bit of a hangover from a week ago. Number 5 is the game within the game. And I talk about this all the time of it's not just the score, but it's how healthy you can come out of a game. Because if you suffer serious injuries, even if you got a win, you may have lost that game, right? Can Green Bay finally get out of a game healthy, especially on the road on a field that's notoriously bad? That's what I want to see in this game. Now, obviously, I want to see Green Bay win this football game, but I would love to see Green Bay finally get out of a game healthy and not have a major issue to be concerned about coming out. And again, if you can go through Chicago and Soldier Field and that turf and get out of there without any injuries, it is a huge win, and that's another thing that I'll be looking for in this game. Number 6, and I don't think I need to expound upon this one too much, can Green Bay's kicking game keep it together? That's from a protection standpoint, from a snap standpoint, from a hold standpoint, from a kick standpoint. The entire operation has been a little bit of a nightmare lately. Almost block kicks, and we can say almost doesn't count. It's worrisome nonetheless. And of course, last week, 4 missed kicks by Mason Crosby. That kicking team has to be better. Number 7 is just how much can Green Bay, get out of this coaching battle. And what I mean by that is Matt LaFleur is an insanely good coach, in my opinion. Matt Nagy, not so much. This is one of the biggest advantages/disadvantages there is in this game, is Green Bay's advantage from a pure coaching standpoint. And I think that can play a factor in this game. And I want to see just how big of a factor that can play. Green Bay's decision makings on 3rd downs and 4th downs and so on and so forth. They're very analytical in their approach. I know Matt LaFleur this week said stats are for losers. However, they are very in tune with those sort of decisions. And I do think that Green Bay has a major advantage in coaching, having Matt LaFleur over Matt Nagy in this game. Number 8, Green Bay needs to stay ahead of the sticks. They can't get into a bunch of 3rd and longs. You don't want, Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks and Robert Quinn, assuming they all play, to be able to tee off in this one. Matt LaFleur talked about it this week. It's so important that they're able to stay ahead of the sticks, keep it in 3rd and manageable, and not give Chicago an opportunity to tee off and be a bit more exotic on the back end. Number 9, again, this one kind of goes without saying as well, but can Green Bay finally get a better red zone performance on both sides of the field? Can their offense step up, not have to settle for field goals? And defensively, can they finally get a stop in the red zone and force Chicago to maybe kick some field goals? That would be a huge win in this one. Number 10, contain Jakeem Grant. If you're not familiar with Jakeem Grant, he comes over from Miami. He's like a 5'8", 4'3", 40 speedster who is an okay wide receiver, but a dynamic kick returner and punt returner. The Bears just acquired him in a trade a week or two ago. I think it was last week, but correct me if I'm wrong. Either way, this is a player that can wreck your punt coverage, specifically punt coverage. He can be dynamic on kick returns too, but if you let him get going in any way, shape, or form, he is a problem. And this is a special teams that is known to have issues with these type of punt returners. It seems like as much as Green Bay has been so much better on offense and quarterback against Chicago these last couple decades, Chicago's always had the one up on kick returner, punt returner, and on the defensive side of the ball. It's sort of been a yin and yang sort of thing. It seems ripe that Green Bay special teams would give up something stupid in this game. It seems ripe that the Bears would be the one to do it. Watch out for Jakeem Grant in this game. Number 11, every time it seems like Green Bay catches a break and maybe an Adrian Peterson or, some big-time running back is out, it seems like some third-string running back goes off for 150 yards. Well, the Bears are down to their 4th-string running back and their 5th-string running back, Khalil Herbert and Ryan Nall. And I mentioned yesterday, I actually like both of these running backs, but you can't have some bizarro game where, Ryan Nall or Khalil Herbert run for 160 yards. I've really liked what Green Bay's done from a run defense standpoint. Obviously, Devondre Campbell's been a huge part of that. Kenny Clark's been a huge part of that. But I've liked their gap integrity. I've liked how they've managed the running game. Keep that going this week, and don't let some bizarro running back run for 160 yards and 2 touchdowns, because those are the sort of things that happen. And then last but not least, attack Eddie Jackson. That may seem odd if you're familiar with Eddie Jackson from a couple years ago. Eddie Jackson from a couple years ago hasn't been the same since probably 3 years ago. He is apt to take too many chances. He is not great in coverage. He is an inconsistent tackler. If you can find ways to attack him in space, if you can find ways to attack him down the field, do so. Take advantage of that. Jashaun Gibson's not a great athlete at this stage in his career, but he's consistent. Their corners are consistent. Go at Eddie Jackson and find ways. Maybe you can get him on a double move. Maybe you can attack him in a variety of different ways. But I want to see Green Bay attack that second level, and specifically at Eddie Jackson. Final thoughts. I think Green Bay wins this game. I think it's a little bit tight. I think Green Bay is going to have a little bit of a hangover from last week and the extra snaps that they played in overtime in a rather emotional game. Green Bay wins by 3. I think the kicking game will be better. I think the red zone game will be better. But I think they might be just a tad bit worn down. On the road in Chicago, tough game, division opponent. Chicago's going to do everything in their power to win this game. But I like Green Bay late by a field goal. I'm going to say 27-24 Packers in the end. That's going to do it for me today. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll be right back here tomorrow to recap everything. But until next time, and as always, especially today against the Bears, go Pack Go.